Hello, my name is Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland Tanner.
And welcome to our Thursday episode of the 905er. We are coming at you with a very big week, it seems, in the 905 region. Before we get to our stories that we want to talk about, I'm going to make a quick shameless plug for our Patreon. We would like, if you've been enjoying the work that we've been doing and the podcast so far, we can't do it for free, unfortunately. And we need your support and your financial contributions to help us keep the lights on at 905er headquarters. The benefit is, if you do sign up for our basic entry level, we have nifty looking car decals that you can put in your car window, so you can let everybody, as you're stuck in traffic or parked in the parking lot, know that you are a 905er podcast listener. Please make sure that you sign up. The link is in the show notes description. And now on with the show. So, Roland, what's happened in the 905 this week?
Well, a whole bunch, eh? And it kind of comes back to that point we made in Tuesday's episode with San Grawal, that we're not a backwater anymore, by any stretch of the imagination. Everything that's happening with COVID, with development, with highways, it's all 905. Which brings us, also ties in nicely to the need for patron supporters and things like that, so that we can. We'd really like to get into some investigative type journalism stuff, and there's certainly, I know there's stories that we've both been working on in our free time, at the moment. You picked up on a story in the Burlington Post, or Inside Halton, from last week, about something that Burlington's doing with how they're handling their parks, specifically Spencer Smith Park, I think, this summer. I'll hand that back over to you to to talk about that. But it certainly it raised a couple of questions in my mind, and you can say the questions it raised for you.
I mean, the story on InsideHalton.com, basically the city of Burlington is going to introduce a park ambassador program this year to help curb the number of large crowds that we're seeing in our public parks due to the pandemic. It's understandable. We have limited options, it seems, these days with how to spend our free time, and we all want to get out and enjoy the warm summer air and get a breath of fresh air. And so we go to our parks, go to walk, bike, hike, what you normally do in a park. That's understandable. It's what else are you going to do? The problem is we all tend to do it at the same time, causing large crowds to congregate in the more popular parks in the city. Again, that's a natural thing. To curb that, though, the city is going to spend $350,000 of tax dollars to create a park ambassador program. And what does a park ambassador do? Glad you asked. Presumably not really a whole lot of anything, from what I can tell. The idea is, as crowds build in the park, if they need to call the maintenance crews to come in to clean up, garbage, whatever, they can call them to come in. They can remind everyone to maintain their social distance due to COVID-19, in case somehow they've been under a rock for the last year and a half. And if there are large crowds that are not willing to disperse or keep their distance, they have the authority to call someone with authority, meaning the bylaw enforcement, to come in and issue tickets or whatever action needs to be done. This is going to cost us, at least here in the Burlington taxpayer, $350,000. And they'll be focused primarily on Spencer Smith Park, which is, for those who are not aware, in the 905, Spencer Smith Park here in Burlington is the waterfront park. It's very popular. Not a lot of space, but it is the kind of the main congregation park, I guess you could call it. down by the waterfront. Very beautiful in the summertime, very popular, understandably, but $350,000 to primarily focus these ambassadors to be able to call a bylaw official if cases get out of hand. My beef with it, in case you haven't been able to tell, is I think this is a waste of tax dollars. I mean, if this is an issue, which it very well probably could be, why wouldn't you just tell the Halton bylaw officers, patrol the park on a bright, sunny summer day, especially on a weekend when you know there'll be a lot of people able to get out and walk. Just tell bylaw, patrol the parks a little bit more frequently. That's all you have to do.
My question is, well, I feel like the city handled the whole issue of parks very badly last year. And it is part of my beef with, well, let's just say it, my beef, especially with the mayor, for having started out literally going around town with a bullhorn looking for people to shout at, tell them to get indoors. This sounds like a really cheap shot, and it's difficult. I know these people better than I know politicians in other cities, and I feel uncomfortable, but hell, I've got I'm not much of a news and media show if I don't say what I think. It was already quite clear early in the pandemic that the safest place to be was outdoors, short of actually just being in your own house with the door shut. And yet we had a really very heavy-handed approach to don't go outside, which gave no credence to people who lived in apartments, people with young families. It was just stay the hell indoors. If you do go outside, walk on the street where you live. Well, if you live in an apartment downtown, the street where you live actually is right by the park. Yeah. and it's safe. There were people talking about closing down lanes on roads which were lying completely empty so that people could cycle. No, can't do that. Too dangerous. And they acted like that then they got to the fall and it was like, no, we want all the stores open, and keep us out of all this thing because we're so much better than the rest of Ontario. That panned out really well, didn't it? And now they're paranoid because they screwed it up last year, and a few bylaw officers, absolutely regrettably, ended up facing frustrations from members of the public, which I'm not excusing. There's no excuse for abusing people who are just trying to do their job. I suspect that this reflects a degree of trying to spin things in a more positive direction. Certainly the article in the Post is, again, it's something. My beef with the story is almost the way that the Post deals with things like this. This is almost like a press release from the city that they have had a quick phone call with a councillor, and kind of just thrown up on the front of the website. It's like, is this journalism really? And I'm not saying that I'm the best because I'm doing this in my evenings at whatever hour, and I'm just commenting more than journalizing. But it's like, boy, this isn't, ask some questions, ask the next question. What are the implications of this? Why can't that $350,000 be used to hire actual bylaw officers? Why can't you use the easily controllable entrances and exits to the park as a way of controlling numbers, which was something that was suggested by people last week? I mean, it's been too quick to kind of shame people for going to the park when it's literally the only place you can go. And then
I just
not take the kind of responsibility themselves to do the job properly.
It's almost like a solution looking for a problem, because I don't know. I've never heard of a COVID-19 outbreak from a park gathering. I know that I remember going out looking for, on a weekend where my family and I are just looking to get out of the house. We say, let's go for a walk through a park. Spencer Smith was one, and we get there and we think it's too crowded. So we say, okay, move on. We're going to find something else to do. Go for a walk in the neighborhood. I always wondered why couldn't just a couple of police bylaw officers just patrolling up and down the park. Just the presence alone would be enough to break that up, break up the commotion. I'm puzzled as to why we have to go spending $350,000 of our tax dollars on this problem when if it is such a problem, if people are gathering in the park, and this is such an epicenter of COVID-19, which I don't believe it is, then maybe it's prudent to shut down the parks. The problem is it's not. It's just we need to look like we're proactive on COVID-19, and yet you're right, Roland. For the last two lockdowns, all the Halton mayors have written letters to the premier saying, no, we're special, we're exceptional. Don't put us into lockdown measures. And what happens? Oh, everybody goes out, they congregate, they help spread COVID-19. This, something that we've talked about numerous times on this podcast is the messaging surrounding how to live with this is so muddled and confusing from all levels, from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. When people are asking, how do I live my life? You say, oh, parks are safe. It's safe to go outside, go get some exercise outside, go for a run, ride your bike, go for a walk with your family, go enjoy maybe a picnic with your family outdoors, enjoy this bright summer air while we can, all that's safe. And now you're saying, well, it's too dangerous that we're going to have to put park ambassadors to do crowd control. And I'm just like, there's even if you wanted to do that, it's so ineffectual. It's borderline on just, again, you just have $350,000 sitting around in a budget and say, what are we going to do with it? I don't know. Give it to some schlub in a vest walking through Spencer Smith Park, and he can go ask the crowd of anti-maskers to kindly leave. And when they spit in his face, now we go call the bylaw. It
doesn't sit well with me either. The whole, and it has that overtone again of you guys, you public, you're not behaving properly, and which the public has done what it's been asked to do every time it's been asked to do it properly. When people do dumb things, it's often because the rules are not clear. I don't want to sound exactly like one of the kind of conspiracy theorists who says, I've done my research. But, I've read a few scientific articles peer-reviewed about transmission outdoors, and no one's been able to show that it doesn't happen, because it's very, very difficult to show it doesn't happen. Show that it does happen either.
On that note, wouldn't it make more sense for the city to spend that $350,000 to encourage, especially in the downtown area where we have a number of very lovely restaurants and bars, who are all suffering now because now we're in lockdown number 3. Who knows? Maybe we'll be in lockdown number 4 by the end of this. But they are hurting financially as we enter into the warmer months, to encourage that those that you go downtown, order takeout, take your meal to the park, and enjoy on maybe some park benches that you and your family could enjoy a meal from a local restaurant outdoors on a hot summer day. That's what you do now. Maybe close off the streets, close off some of the streets for the downtown, put some benches and say, we're going to have walking promenades. You go, you take your coffee, you take your fish and chips, your burger, whatever, and you go sit with your family around a table outdoors and enjoy the downtown, walk it off, that kind of stuff. Something, think outside the box. How do you help? Instead of just saying, well, just order takeout and then say, oh, we're special, give us special permission. Come up with actual solutions to encourage the small businesses to help them through this.
And I'm not going to blame the whole council for that, because I know that it's not the whole council that has brought this to pass, this lack of imagination around things like that. There have been councillors who were pushing in the early days for things like you just mentioned, a more innovative approach, doing the kind of things that were happening in Paris, where they immediately opened this huge network of cycle lanes in Paris within days. Boy, I don't think there's any city in North America who can make a decision that quickly. But the committee of people who are actually running the city during the emergency, which is the mayor, the city manager, and the kind of heads of department, which does not include the other councillors, basically stopped pretty much everything in those early days, and I haven't really seen any sign of any great imagination happening since. I get that people are risk averse, so any new idea is like, well, no, maybe it's risky, maybe it's
now is the time
We're in a
to
crisis.
try. Now is the time for innovation, for risk taking, and to try new things to spur economic growth. If you want the downtown to be full of small, independently owned businesses, now's the time to start innovating and actually put in infrastructure to help them survive. Not well wishes, not tweeting, hey, go take out today. Like, actually give people a reason to go down, order takeout, and give them a place to sit around. So maybe they do, you go to have takeout in one spot, go for dessert in another. You walk and you do some shopping if you can. Provided, but this is just, to me, it's just a waste of resources, and it's a lack of imagination. It's lazy is what it is. It's really lazy on the part of Burlington, and I'm hoping it's not something that's not replicated across the 905. I mean, if anybody's living in another community in the 905 and you hear your city or town is thinking about doing this, tell them no. Tell them set up public areas around where your restaurants and your small businesses are to encourage people to eat there, to dine there. If you can, turn your cities into walking
using the opportunities
places
that COVID has brought about to an extent.
That's, we need to start thinking of change. That's how we're going to do this.
Okay, so our second story tonight is, it's COVID. Guess what? And there's been some big developments, and they're all, most of them happening in the 905 region, starting with Peel yesterday, literally as we were recording our last episode. And really amounts to, seems to me anyway, our regional officials giving up on the province and saying, okay, if you won't do it, we will. Which about time, good for them and about time. But is that the way you see it?
I view it as a nice, neat, and tidy Canadian rebellion that's happening with our public health officials, and kudos to them. I think they need our encouragement and our support right now, because they are the ones who are clearly fed up with pleading up the ladder, pleading up the command chain, and getting these wishy-washy mixed message. Wait and see. Big news is coming. We're gonna, I'll turn this province around before you can say spit. Kind of attitude from Premier Doug Ford and Minister Lecce and Minister Elliott and the rest of them. I don't know this. But I can imagine that part of this has to be just an absolute frustration of, we see the science. We've done this twice now. They haven't followed our requests. I'm taking the awesome powers that have been entrusted to me under the Act, and I'm implementing it. And I do want to emphasize that while the news is on Dr. Lowe at Peel Public Health for taking the initiative, he is not alone in this. Far from it. I'm going through it. We know that Wellington Catholic in Guelph is they're closing their schools. I believe Niagara Region is also closing. There is the Upper Grand District School Board. And then today the big news was that Toronto was going close. So, I mean, clearly there are other public health units in various degrees of COVID spread who are saying, no, the science, we're not waiting for the numbers to get to there. The point is to take action now so the numbers do not reach that catastrophic level. But I mean, we're at 3,000 plus reported new cases daily almost these days. So I don't know what the province is waiting for in terms of a threshold. But it's clear that this has thrown our provincial leadership off kilter. This is really, they did not see this coming, mostly because if you watch Doug Ford's press conference, especially today is Tuesday, April 6th that we're recording. If you watch them today, the news is, if you're saying that schools are so safe, why is it that you have Dr. Lowe and his colleagues at the various public health units closing them down? And it's a very legitimate point that, either at this point, you trust Doug Ford or you trust the public health officers. It's my faith is in the public health officers. They're the ones who are on the front lines. They've spent their entire careers studying this, the science behind this, the news behind this. When they're looking at the numbers, that's the conclusion that they come to. I'm inclined to say, okay, I believe you, which is kind of what you would hope the leadership would say. Okay, well, we'll have to figure out how to do this properly.
I mean, it's a case of, the whole experience has been interesting for me in watching a very different country from the one I grew up in how it is governed and how it's decentralized. And I've been frustrated at times that the central government has been so unwilling to have the spine to make a decision. I mean, I guess the saving grace is that because we are so decentralized that our regions can then say, well, screw you, we're going to do it anyway. It's taken an awfully long time. And I think it's because people are clearly losing any remaining faith. I mean, the people who thought Doug was doing okay, I think those days must be approaching over. The last few people who still think Doug is doing an okay job must be giving up. Well, this is a mess.
Well, I mean,
the numbers now are just horrendous.
The numbers are climbing. It's clear the province is hoping, we'll just vaccinate people and this whole thing will go away. The problem is they're screwing that plan up as well. I know we've mentioned it before on the podcast, but I think it bears repeating. Today I did a quick tweet out, and there's about 1.7 million doses in Ontario sitting in freezers. Like 1.7 million. That's not a supply issue anymore. It's clearly a logistical issue. I'll give credit where it's due. Finally, Doug Ford and Minister Elliott have come to their senses and heard the cries of the professionals out there saying, we need to go where the disease is. Go into the postal codes that are most infected with COVID. Go to the workplaces, the warehouses, the essential workers who are so important for our economy to keep going.
Yeah, and then the nightmare scenario, like we said, that this disease would change, would find a way to affect younger people, is happening. The people in the ICUs are not the people in long-term care anymore. Well, for one reason, I guess, because those guys have been vaccinated, thank goodness. But also because it's the workers in the factories and the warehouses who are getting it, who have not been given the time, the ability to have sick days, all these other things. This is a Doug-made problem. We didn't need to have 3 waves. We didn't need to have 2. And when we started this podcast, I didn't want to be an anti-provincial, predictably anti-provincial thing. It's not what we're about. But this is a failure of colossal extent, a failure of intelligence and planning and given acres of time to get this stuff in order. The vaccines are here. You need to put them in the car, take them to the, we're not going to use doctors, we're not going to use pharmacies, we're not going to use, what the bloody hell, why not? Just get it to whoever is qualified to use a needle and stick it in someone's arm. I don't get it.
clearly there's a failure here. There's a failure of operations. There's a failure of logistics. There's a failure of planning or failure of imagination to come up with how do we do this? And it's, instead we get the blame game, right? It's Justin Trudeau's fault. It's the people's fault. They're not following the guidelines. Okay, we're going to change this. It's everybody's fault but Doug Ford's and this provincial government. And why is that? And I said, the only solution I could come up with is hubris. They just blame Justin Trudeau because I run out of people to blame. The people of Ontario don't like me telling them, oh, stay indoors. When I told them, when I canceled their March break, because I said, hey, I need you to do this so we don't get a third wave. And then the third wave arrives and the people of Ontario say, you canceled our March break you postponed our March break so that we didn't have to be in this situation. We're in this situation. Do you know what you're doing? He then says, oh, it's Justin Trudeau's fault. He didn't get me enough vaccines. The fact is the supply chain is secure now. We know that the vaccines are here in the country. We know we have 1.7 million sitting on freezer shelves. That's on you. That's entirely on you, Doug. Don't tell me that this is saved for some kind of ramp up or that this is, you can't get you have to slow down your process. We saw here in Hamilton, there is, at First Ontario Centre, is a mass vaccination clinic. Like a fraction of the possible, only 100 or so of the designated times were filled out of a possible 800. Like there's a failure here to get these things into arms. This is on you, Doug. You got to wear this.
Yeah, and don't start blaming, as I've seen from someone who would be well advised not to comment on COVID because of their own little story a couple of months ago when they were out of the country, saying, come on, people, why are you using these things? Well, you don't blame people for not filling those appointments. There are millions of people in Ontario who would happily go to those appointments. It's the failure to think of the way that, well, A, you're aiming at older people, you're asking them to go through a website, which is, okay, I design websites for a living. It's fairly simple, but there's about 10 steps you have to go through. You have to select this, that, and other. I know through long experience that you give people a couple of drop downs, you're going to lose about half your visitors right there, because you're asking all these questions. Do you have this? Do you do that? Where do you live? What's your postcode? You have just fundamentally balls the whole thing up. When you go that road of asking people to organize it, when there's no need for people to organize it for themselves, you tell them when to go. Yep. It's like, I keep on saying this phrase. I'm going to get it tattooed somewhere prominent, either on my body or Doug's. If you elect people who think government is useless, you'll get a useless government, and that's the ultimate problem. These people don't believe in the ability of government to deliver anything. They would prefer it doesn't exist. And when you have a crisis like this, it has to exist because government's the only thing that can do it. This is why in a crisis, in a pandemic, in this kind of scale of public health emergency, saying we'll let every region decide which way to go is not the way it really should work. I mean, like I said, these guys are some of them are going to basically bail us out of the trouble we're in because we've got a moron for a premier, and a bunch of morons as his government. However, in theory, a pandemic is like a war, right? I mean, we should be on a war footing. We should be doing the extraordinary things that you do in extraordinary circumstances where you move heaven and earth.
I'll be honest, my dad came up with, I thought, with the best analogy for this pandemic is that it's not a war at all. It's a forest fire. The virus is a forest fire, and we are the fuel. We're the trees. This thing is just burning through us. It will burn through us if we let it. How do we do that? We cut fire breaks. We break the spread by just making a break between the fire line. That's how you fight forest fires, right? You go and you cut a line in the forest, and the virus just, or the fire just burns itself out.
That is a great analogy. Yeah.
That's how we need to treat this thing. And instead, this government seems to just want to, we'll just keep, we'll bring a fire extinguisher and we'll put out this shrub, and we'll try and throw a bucket on the flames, and maybe that'll be enough to curb it. And you know what? We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, Dr. Lowe and his colleagues' decisions in the coming weeks will prove to be what is needed to help break the spread of COVID-19 and to give the frontline workers the chance to get those needles into arms.
Frankly, Peel alone, if Peel were to kind of sort its own problems out almost, that's almost the same as taking care of Ontario, because Peel has been so horrendous. And certainly a firebreak, to use an analogy from the wrong country's history, we need Winston Churchill when we've had Neville Chamberlain, but he's dressed up in Winston Churchill's clothes the whole way, It's like Doug's whole thing is like, yeah, I'm the man, I'm going, don't you forget. He's been so spineless, so pathetic, because he doesn't want to upset anybody, particularly anybody who runs a business. He doesn't want to upset them. In the meantime, he has screwed every business in Ontario. It's a fucking disgrace. I've
not heard a teachers union, which is no surprise there, that is supportive of his measures. I have yet to hear of a small business owner who is supportive of Doug Ford's initiatives. I have yet to hear of another parent who is supportive of Doug Ford right now. I have no idea where he's getting this tremendous polling support. It must be people who have their heads up their own asses at this point, because I've yet to hear anybody say, yeah, Doug Ford is doing this a bang up job, unless you are a sycophant or unless you have some kind of financial gain from his government's policies. I think that at this point, this government has just done a horrendous job of muddying the waters, passing the buck, and just tripping over their own feet to get the job done of keeping us safe and getting us through this pandemic. God help us when this is all over, because it'll be entirely on our own shoulders and our own feet that we got through this. No help from Doug Ford whatsoever.
I think that's a good place to bring it to an end for today. For now, thanks everybody, and we'll speak to you next Tuesday with the next episode of the 905er.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.